Baldur's Gate 3 is an upcoming RPG that's currently in development by Larian Studios, the creators behind the extremely beloved role-playing games Divinity: Original Sin 1 and 2. And it's the much anticipated sequel to Baldur's Gate 2, which was originally made by BioWare. Despite still being in development, BG3 has been in early access since 2020, meaning that you can already buy the game and play it as we speak. However, since you will have to pay full price for this upcoming RPG, many of you are probably wondering if it's worth getting right now instead of just waiting for its full release. And well, let's just say that, coming from someone who's a complete newbie to turn-based role-playing games, who never played tabletop Dungeons & Dragons before, and who has never given these types of game a real shot, Baldur's Gate 3 is probably one of the best RPGs I've played in many years, and in my opinion, this is the one game you truly do not want to miss. And in today's video, I'll be going through my experience with Baldur's Gate 3 so far. Without too many spoilers, of course. And as a side note, no, you don't have to play Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 to play Baldur's Gate 3. Anyway, as always, we gotta start with the character creation. And well, BG3's character creation is neither the best nor the worst I've seen yet. It's kind of in between. My main criticism being that you can't adjust your character's facial characteristics like the shape of their nose, lips, cheeks, eyes, and other things that other RPGs tend to let you do. That's not to say that the pre-made faces don't look good, and you can still pick between a huge variety of skin colors and eye colors, so there is most definitely something for everyone here. What struck me most, however, is the amount of different races you can play as, and after at first having tried out a female high elf and then a male half-elf, I finally decided upon my main, this being the best version of a horny girl I could think of. Get it? Horny girl? Anyway, the game starts out with us having to escape from a crashing spaceship built out of tentacles and bad vibes. And because YouTube is for kids now, I will have to skip most of the intro because, well, the beginning of this game is filled with nightmare fuel.
She looked like she had never seen anything quite so horrible in all her life.
And so after the Meat Reaper lands unsuccessfully, we make our way through the wreckage, and the first thing we find is a pretty goth girl hanging out on the beach next to us. Of course, we wake her up and engage in a short conversation where we learn that we will soon be transformed into a pair of squid-faced McGees because of a bug planted in our squishy noggins. Well, unless we find a doctor first.
Your skull is about to explode!
And throughout our quest to find a medical professional, we pick up more friends along the way. And let me just point out just how absolutely amazing the animations are for the different characters in Baldur's Gate 3. And I mean this in a general sense and not just for the facial animations. I don't know how the devs at Larian Studios did it, but BG3 currently has some of the best animations out of any RPG released in the last decade, and every character truly feels alive whenever you talk to them, making mostly every conversation feel engaging and interesting.
You saved me, now you'll extort me. That's how this works, yes? Nothing?
Anyway, after being joined by violent but pretty elf man, mysterious magical man, and saving ungrateful but cute orc girl, we soon find ourselves in a bit of a situation as a nearby settlement is getting raided by, you guessed it, evil goblins. Now this is the first real example of how combat works in BG3, and as you can see, it's all about that turn-based goodness. And as I mentioned before, I've never really personally been a fan of turn-based games, but the combat in Baldur's Gate 3 is just so fun, which has been a huge surprise to me. It's all about positioning and strategizing and making sure you always have the high ground so you can catch your enemies off guard while you're weaving different party abilities together to make mincemeat out of anyone that would stand against you. Oh, and pushing enemies off of cliffs, which is just the best gameplay mechanic ever, and I always abuse the hell out of it whenever I get the chance. Speaking of, the combat in BG3 might seem confusing at first to newcomers, but it's actually pretty simple when you've played around with it for a few hours. And the only thing that I think might scare some people away is the fact that you have to rest up at your camp to recharge your most powerful abilities. Abilities that you will need for the stronger enemies of the game. Now this kinda flies in the face of what the game is trying to tell you in the first hours, and a slight spoiler here, but the story is implying that you and your companions are living on borrowed time. And I think this is one of those things that Larian Studios has to convey a little bit better to the player come launch day, as no, gameplay-wise, there is no time limit at all, and you can rest up at your camp as many times as you want, provided you have the camping supplies to fully rest your character. And aside from the general bug here and there, this is probably my main gripe with Baldur's Gate 3 so far. Or well, it was my main gripe until I realized that resting at your camp is something you should do as often as possible to make the game easier. Speaking of the camp, it is really imperative that you use the camp as often as possible, because if you don't, you might miss out on some dialogue scenes and other storytelling beats that's super important for you to experience in order to grow closer to your team.
I take it you're here to pick me up on that bedtime story you were promised. Marvelous. It's a story full of answers long overdue.
Anyway, after dispatching the goblin horde and saving the settlement, we're introduced to some additional characters that you may choose to interact with. Now I say that because BG3 is the type of RPG that literally lets you do anything you want. You see, you don't necessarily have to help out the settlement if you don't want to. You could just straight up go over to the goblins on the other side of the map and choose to ally yourself with them instead. Whereby, if you're feeling a little douchey that particular day of the week, you can simply march over and wipe out the settlement with your new gobbo friends. But since I have a tendency to always play as a goody two-shoes, I chose to help out my demonic brethren, and so it was decided that goblin kind would go extinct in this particular part of Faerun.
Spicy meat. Yeah, boy.
But destroying all goblins is no easy task in Baldur's Gate 3. And Larian Studios have really succeeded in making you feel like you have to work hard to complete your objectives in BG3. Something that sounds as simple as to wipe out a goblin camp is in actuality pretty hard to do, simply because of the way that the gameplay is structured. BG3 also really makes you think about your choices, whether that being how you approach a battle or how you speak to certain individuals, because this could affect so many things in a massive way going forward. Something so simple as asking the wrong questions could have you either end up in a difficult battle or gaining a newfound friend. And if you're feeling particularly murderous, you could simply just straight up kill important characters and it will in some way affect your personal story going forward. Hell, you can even skip out on recruiting some individuals altogether, and you might even find them dead later on in the game. Thankfully, as I'm going for the perfect playthrough, all of my teammates are still alive and I successfully hunted down and destroyed each and every goblin in the country, thereby saving the nearby settlement. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game that's so insanely filled to the brim with details, and despite it being in early access still with most content inaccessible at the moment, BG3 has genuinely impressed me in a way I did not think was possible. The story is still a huge mystery despite me having played for over 40 hours already. Most of the characters you meet are memorable in some way, combat is fun and satisfying, exploring the various parts of the map is exciting, and interacting with something as inconspicuous as a well in the middle of nowhere can lead you to an entirely new section of the map. The sound design is crisp, the music is incredibly atmospheric, and most voice actors do a really good job with their roles.
Do not trust a devil. Is that plain enough? Refuse him. No matter how tempting the offer, no matter how delicious the feast he lays out for you. The cost's always too great.
If you're looking for an amazing RPG with some incredible depth, then you should absolutely check out Baldur's Gate 3, and there is much more to come when the game officially launches this August 2023. Now remember to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.